All right. We can kick things off today. I want to thank everyone who is here with us tonight. Thanks for taking this next hour out of your night with us. Tim is going to walk us through a little bit of the Trace platform today, talk about Trace ID, and then a few more features you'll hear about. A few housekeeping things before we begin. One, this workshop is going to be recorded and is going to be sent out to anyone who couldn't make it with us tonight. So that will get sent to your inboxes right after this. And then also, if you have any questions, feel free to use the chat box or the question and answer function. You put your question right in there, and then we'll get to that anytime throughout the workshop, or then also at the end as well. All right, Tim, I'll kick it over to you.
All right. Well, thank you, Rhiannon. I appreciate that. Sometimes you do a little bit better job of the hype, so we'll have to review that again. But thank you, coaches, for joining us tonight. We do appreciate it. I know Mondays are always kind of overreaction Mondays, dealing with everything that didn't happen on the weekend or happened on the weekend. So I really do appreciate you guys taking the time out for us. My name is Tim Bennett, and I'm the Director of Player and Coach Education at Trace. But prior to Trace, I spent over 20 years coaching Division I college soccer all over the country. Spent over a decade coaching in the SEC, coached in your guys' neck of the woods at the University of Arizona, so bear down, and then coached in the Big 12. I was a development academy director. I was an ECNL staff coach, so I've really been on a lot of different sides of this thing, and I've been at Trace now for over 2 years. And I came across Trace in a kind of a similar fashion to kind of how you guys have discovered this, through an event or maybe word of mouth. And there were a lot of things that Trace does very naturally that appeal to me as a coach. And that's really what we're going to kind of go over here tonight. So as Rhiannon indicated, I'm going to share my screen here. If you guys have questions, just go ahead and throw them in the chat. She'll be able to answer them as we go, and if not, we'll kind of get to them at the end. But this is the agenda that I put together for tonight, and we're going to go back just a little bit before we jump into the platform. And I think it's important for us as coaches to really understand how important video is for this generation of athletes. And you'll see as it kind of unfurls here how it is kind of a perfect marriage between visual learning and our Gen Z athletes. Then we'll jump into the Trace platform. I'll go over some of the playlists, how they're created, some of the player performance data, and then we'll jump into Trace ID Plus and what Trace ID Plus is for coaches as well as it is for players. And then some additional best practices for Trace with our Gen Z athletes, and then some contact information as towards the end here. So let's begin. And you know, it's funny, like coaches, we do a lot of things naturally that we don't know why, but we just do them. And they're correct. And theories kind of play that out. And video is something that is one of those things. We have done it for a long, long time. Obviously, the youth space, the availability of video every day has really increased over the past couple of years. But let's not forget why it is so valuable. The first thing that video does is it fights attribution bias, that it is very objective, that there's no emotion. We have all heard the saying, video never lies. And because it never lies, because it's unemotional, feedback is much more effective, and our players understand this. The other aspect that video does is it's called psychoneuromuscular theory. And what psychoneuromuscular theory is essentially players get the exact same neurological benefits watching video, not watching video like a TikTok page or a For You page on TikTok, but actually watching video with a critical perspective. They get the same neurological benefits as if they were training with you. But what video really essentially does is it accelerates development. in retrieve and rehearse. It puts stuff from a player's short-term memory into their long-term memory. And when the game or individual decisions or techniques reside in our long-term memory, that's actually where optimal performance lives. And video accelerates that process. But what's really interesting is when you think about all those positives of video, and then you add them to our Gen Z, this is what you get. Gen Z, they are digital natives. They're the first generation that has known nothing but the internet. They learn in very short bursts. They are 87%, depending on the research, 87% are visual learners, which is up 10 to 15% from the previous generation. The other great thing about our Generation Z athletes is they want instant feedback. They want to know what's going on, and they want to know right away. They're self-learners, and the pandemic has accelerated this. They want to kind of learn when they want to learn, kind of on their own, and they want to be in charge of it. So they are extremely tech dependent. And then when you think about what Trace provides, it's a nice little checklist. Trace is an online analytical video platform composed of short form moments. It delivers individual and team playlists in a very, very short turnaround, 8 to 10 hours post-game. And the great thing about Trace is it's always at a player's fingertips. It's always on their phones, ready to go. So what is Trace essentially? And this is my definition of Trace. And yes, it's probably a bad run-on sentence and everything else, but Trace is an analytical platform that accelerates soccer development by increasing engagement. And what I mean by increasing engagement, it gets players to watch it. It gets players to watch it not just once, but twice, but 3, but 4 times. All because of those short form moments, the player performance data. But what I love about Trace and being in clubs for so long is the way video used to work for clubs. It was just one directional. Parents would pay, right? They'd probably even do the video taping or the HiPods or whatever it was. They would even upload it, or the coach would upload it. Then the coach would edit it and the player would watch it. And it was that much of a straight line. But what Trace does is it kind of makes it a complete loop. Parents get to enjoy the video. Players obviously get the benefit of the video, and coaches get the benefit of the video. It truly is, I think, the one athletic or sports tech that provides value for all 3 major players within kind of that pyramid. So let me show you exactly what I mean here. That kind of bounce around here. So after the way the platform essentially works is it's really simple. Players, right before the game, there's a little bit of a syncing process. Players put on tracers, a little kind of wearable on their dominant calf. At play the game, after the game, tracers go back in this little trace case, gets uploaded, and then within that 8 to 12 hour period post upload, you get your playlist. The game gets fully processed. The playlist that you get is every individual player gets their moments. And it's not just an ESPN top 10 created playlist. This is good moments, bad moments, and indifferent moments. Any moment that a player interacts with the ball or is near an interaction gets tagged. Now, some of those neutral moments to a non-coach would be like, well, those don't really matter, but we know that every moment is coachable. Every moment is a developmental moment. And that's what Trace provides. Not only do you get those individual playlists, but you get the team playlists. You get the full game video, unprocessed or unedited. You get a progressions playlist. And this is actually my favorite playlist. The progressions playlist is actually based off of a German statistic called packing. But essentially what the moments in here are composed of is they are composed of verticality, where 2 or more of the opposition are eliminated by the pass or the dribble. So view this playlist as like possession with a purpose. If you're building out of the back, you break the first line of pressure, that's progression. Could be a long diagonal ball that eliminates the midfield group and the back four, that's a progression. So this truly has direction, verticality, purpose. Defensive breakdowns, very, very similar to progression, just the opposite. You won't get 1v1s, but you'll get the small groups of 2, groups of 3, groups of 4. You get the goal playlist, both home and away goals. You get a touch chains playlist. This is best described as passing strings of 2 or more passes involving 2 or more players. And then you get the game broken down into thirds. So everything that you need to analyze a game is already done for you. The fun stuff is on the platform itself, is that, and this game was, a couple weeks ago, but you can see that this game alone, this was a game at a showcase here in Florida, that this game has over 1,300 views. That's a lot. Players are going in watching it. Parents are going in watching it. Coaches are going in and watching it. That's really great to see. Not 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7 views, but 1,300. And then the other kind of fun thing that I love about Trace, and this is perfect for Generation Z, and more importantly, this is perfect for Generation Z parents and coaches, is that now every moment is shareable, whether it's Facebook or Twitter, copying the link, downloading it into an MP4, uploading it to TikTok or Instagram. Every moment can be shared. I have a lot of coaches across the country that are now becoming extremely social media wise. And what they're doing is they're coaching their teams via social media, putting out very, very unique and select moments, knowing that their team is going to watch it. So it's just another way to hit Generation Z in their kind of sweet spot of learning. You get a player radar here, and it's a little bit off here at the moment. The longer the yellow tail, the faster that player is moving, along with the accuracy is probably within 5 to 10 feet. So it's pretty spot on. We have 2 maps in our platform, and the more, I think, visual you make the game, or the more, I guess the term is, the more gamify you make the game, the more Generation Z hits, the better it is. And I think this bird's eye view in particular is perfect. And we know that players get lost spatially. They lose orientation. And having a map providing this perspective gives them just a little bit of a different view so they can see those relationships. The fun part, or part of the fun part, begins on the players' halves here. Is once I click that player icon, now I have access to all their player performance data. You get 5, right? 5, yeah. 5 statistics: minutes played, top speed, distance, and stamina, and max efforts. I won't go into the definitions of each, but all 4 of the major ones, speed, distance, stamina, and max efforts, what they essentially provide coaches or provide players is they provide them with a really unique overview of a player's individual statistical output. Distance, stamina, how long, their fitness, max efforts, how their load, how intense they played. And it always ties in very nicely with the video. The one thing that I've learned in coaching through a lot of data is that numbers like this, they just help to describe the game. What really matters is that those playlists, the video, but these provide a little bit more context within it. And then clicking on an individual player, I now get just their breakdown, and I also get their heat map. The darker the blue, the more work was done in that particular area of the field. So this now gives me a little bit more indication of that player's positional discipline or positional mobility. Then the last kind of the fun thing, we have a feature called Trace ID, Trace ID Plus. And what Trace ID Plus is for coaches, and this is the coach of this team, is it allows you to create multiple playlists of unlimited moments. And the way that George has this broken down is he's broken it down on the 4 or 5 different concepts or team objectives that he wants his players to learn. On a player's standpoint, which your players will be having to go through in this ID camp here coming up this weekend, is this is what a Trace ID Plus looks like for a player in that recruiting timeframe. Is that they're able to create multiple playlists based off of high school or based off of club moments. It could be a specific showcase event, and continue to share them with college coaches. And I love Trace ID Plus, not only for all those developmental aspects that we talked about, the ability to create playlists, but how I think it blows up the recruiting process. And you guys know what it's like. A coach shows up at a game, watches 10 minutes, gets up and leaves. It's 9:30, at Reach 11 on a Saturday. And that's all that player gets. That's essentially like just taking a picture and saying, recruit me. Well, what Trace ID Plus does for that recruitable age is it makes that still picture a motion picture, that they get a chance to continually provide new content to coaches week in and week out, that they truly get to present, I think, not just a holistic view of themselves, but essentially what they really are as a player, over time. And so not only do they have the highlights, there's the game library, the statistics that we just kind of went over shortly are graphed out over those 5 games, and then their resume, their profile, contact information. So the way that I view Trace ID Plus for recruitable age kids is when we all evaluate players, whether it's a club coach, a college coach, we evaluate them in 4 big buckets, right? Technical, tactical, physical, and psychosocial, right? Well, what Trace ID does, it puts all 4 of those major buckets on one platform. No other platform does that. You're either looking at a video-based one, and then you're having to open up another browser tab, pull up their player performance data, and then you've got to open up a different one to pull up academic information, and it's a pain in the butt. But what Trace ID does, it puts all of that stuff on one platform. But more importantly, this is student athlete led. This isn't like putting, like doing a Google search and pulling up a player. This is from the student athlete. This is that sense of empowerment. This is that sense of determination. This is that sense that every college coach says that they want them to be engaged in it. Well, Trace ID allows them to be engaged in a very, very efficient way. But let's go back to the coaching stuff here. So on the playlists themselves, and you can see how George kind of aligned this, is that on the right hand side, you've got his coaching points. That what he's done is he's gone back to all of these games and created an individual coaching point based off of those game objectives. But what's the best part of it is how easy it's done. And we're all used to reacting to, let's go to this game here, this most recent one. We're all used to kind of commenting or acting or reacting to a social media post. And the Trace ID plus process is very, very similar. Once we come across a coachable moment, all we do is hit the star. And now we get a chance to assign it to a playlist. So let's just put it in just our favorite one right here. And now I get the ability to make my points. I can adjust the duration, so I can make it shorter or longer so I capture exactly what I want to capture. I can add my spotlight. Maybe I want to spotlight a specific player. Maybe I want to spotlight a specific space, either that we gave up or we're trying to defend or we're trying to attack into. And then I can use these subtitles, I call these. And we auto-populate them. For some of them, you don't have to use them. You can mix and match. And this just gives you a coach a little bit more, or a player if they're describing, a moment for a college coach, just a little bit more context. And then you can add your, test moment. Add your coaching point. And then now, here it is on our playlist. And so we can go back game by game, go over those certain objectives, pull up moments, and then when we're ready with our playlist, then we are able to share it. Then we're able to share our Trace ID, copying the link, emailing it to the team, or from a player's perspective, emailing it to a college coach. So it really becomes, I think for a coach, this gives a coach an area to organize highlights, to organize individual game by game playlists, individual game objectives. And so by the end of the season, where you play 20 games or 30 games, now you have a visual record of development or not development. I've got coaches that do this exact same thing with individual players, that they've created a Trace ID playlist for every player on their team. And after each weekend, they'll add 1 or 2 moments or 3 moments. And so by the end of the season, now they've got this visual IDP. Did they improve? Were there certain themes that just kept popping up that didn't hit the measurement? Or did they exceed that? Well, now you've got this visual record that you have just updated week in and week out that now gives that really holistic view of development from a team perspective, as George has it set up, or from that individual perspective. The other thing too, when we start thinking about that process that I showed you, that's when players go in and create those playlists, whether they're creating for a college coach, that's that little development aspect. That's that retrieve and rehearse. That's that short-term memory to long-term memory, that they're going in there with a very specific purpose. And as they're viewing their moments, they are thinking critically. They are thinking what they did, what they didn't do, what they could have done, and they're rehearsing it. And the more that they do that, man, the better player they're going to become. It's easy, it's fun, it's to be engaged with on their phone. You couldn't ask for a better solution for Generation Z and for Generation Z coaches. So some of the other kind of best practices too is, I call this the mobile classroom. And you know what training sessions are like, right? If you got that second slot and you're waiting for somebody to get their cones off of the field and it's taking forever, just pulling 1 or 2 players aside and going over 2 or 3 moments that maybe you have queued up on your Trace ID, or maybe you're just reviewing one of their playlists. Just that 1, 2, 3 minute conversation with a player. That's it. And you know what kids are like after they talk to a coach? They feel so confident. They're bouncing off the walls. They're so excited. That little individual connection, we know, goes so far. Trust, loyalty, retention. and development. And it's not exciting, like, it's not like you're bringing them into this like 3D set, movie screen. That's not it. But this is, I think, the most impactful, especially for this generation and coming off the pandemic. They're craving this individual coach connection. And just pulling out a phone, something they're used to, looking at a screen and talking to them, now you've really hit a lot of those different boxes. Or you can do a screen record, and that's what Loom and Vidyard do. Is they're a screen record app that allows you to, let's say you use a Trace ID playlist, you have all these moments queued up, you take a 2-minute video and you send that video out to the link to the team where they get to hear your voice and see you kind of coach through the video. You can do virtual classrooms. We're all very comfortable with those now. One exercise I think is great is you just flip it. Just have the players teach. Maybe you tell the backs, hey, create a playlist on such and such phase, and have them teach the team what they're looking for, what they need in order to be successful within that phase. The homework assignment, very similar to that highlight playlist creation. If they're not in that recruiting age, maybe you ask the players to go back and create a playlist based off of your certain game objectives. Oops. Oh, come back here. Or it could be an individual one. Anything to get them to go back to the video to think critically. And then they turn in their homework assignment. You can close that feedback loop by giving them a couple of comments. And then now they've got that extra training session under their belt. The IDP I just talked about, creating an individual playlist for every player on your Trace ID from the beginning of the season to the end, and reviewing that in your season ending meeting, as opposed to just giving them a sheet of paper with a whole bunch of technical numbers and work on your first touch and check your shoulder when you turn. Now you're looking at a video. Now you're giving them actual visual evidence of progression. And then season reviews, now they can come in with playlists, or they can come in with specific moments queued up, ready to go as well. So there are a lot of ways to incorporate video, whether it's in daily training or whether it's season ending. But I think the most important thing I think to take from any type of video analysis is the more organized you are on the front end, the more organized you are about what you want to get out of it, the more efficient that analysis is going to become. And that's why those Trace ID playlists for coaches are so crucial, is that's going to help organize how you're going to view your game and then coach your team. And I think sometimes with video, we always have a tendency to overcoach every single second of every single moment, because we're coaches, that's what we do. But keeping it organized, then that's going to reflect on your team, that they're going to be able to take those 4 or 5 playlists and embed them. That's what's going to stick with them, not over coaching every single second of every single moment through video, but those 5 big ones, especially as they kind of go through your player pathway. That's what we want. That's that club kind of vertical integration. I went really, really fast, Rianne.
No, it was great.
Was there anything? I wanted to keep it kind of tight. Did any questions pop up, or do you want to kind of talk about what's going to happen this weekend?
Yeah, no questions right now, but I can kind of go over what coaches can expect this weekend at the ID camp. And then if anyone has questions, feel free. Now's the time to type away, and then we can answer those after this as well. But for the College ID camp, we just wanted to remind everyone that the College ID camp is happening as part of the Arizona College Showcase this weekend. It's March 5th at 6 p.m. at Reach 11 in Phoenix, Arizona, of course. And then you're going to be able to get to experience everything that Tim took you through tonight, So your kids will be able to trace a game, get their automatically edited videos straight to their inboxes. They'll be able to see and mess around with those player performance metrics. And then, of course, most of all, you'll be able to utilize and access our Trace ID Plus, which Tim was gracious enough to walk us through tonight. We understand that ID camps are a really huge part of the recruiting process. And as Tim has alluded to tonight, Trace ID, what we really think Trace ID is the answer and the solution to really make it a seamless process, not only help your kids develop, but then also be able to show their video footage and kind of seamlessly share it out to coaches cross country. So in addition to all the things that you kind of saw here at Trace, we have a few extra tidbits that we'll show you on site this weekend at the showcase. One of those is every player who registers for the college ID camp this weekend will be getting 1 free month of Trace ID. Unlimited use. They can send it to as many coaches as they want. And then in addition to that, we're also offering complimentary headshots for every Trace ID profile. You'll be able to see us at the registration table. When you come that weekend, we'll have someone there and we'll be able to take a free headshot for you so that you could use that in your profile. You'll get, of course, all of the video footage from the ID camp. And then lastly, we will be having a Trace ID workshop. I believe right now it's scheduled for Sunday, March 13th. You'll be able to see Tim's face again. It's open to players, parents, and of course, coaches are welcome as well. But what Tim's going to go over in that workshop is he's going to go through, now that the kids actually have that footage, he's going to walk them through how to actually create, edit, save a moment to your Trace ID profile. And then on top of that, tips and tricks, excuse me, on how to organize your playlists. And then also just other ways that other players have used Trace ID in the recruiting process and kind of what has come from there. So be sure to keep a lookout for information on that. And let's see, Tim, I don't see any other questions in here. That means I think you did a really good job. But other than that, yeah, we can wrap it up here, and then we'll just have everyone keep an eye out for the Trace ID workshop information this week. Awesome.
Good.
Well, wonderful. I appreciate
All
you
right.
guys taking the time. Yeah, and you all have a great rest of your night.
Good. We'll see you this weekend.
All right. Thanks. Bye.